Jillian is not Jillian is not with us today because Jillian is on a family trip visiting her her roots in Ireland this week. So I had to remember to record this. Um, so as we do this, will be recorded. Once she gets back, we'll have it posted to the website. They don't like me to get too close to that amount of technology around here. Okay, we have a one page front and back, two page, or I guess you will, that everybody received. That was a kind of the latest draft coming out of our last technical committee meeting, along with some follow-ups, and everybody's had a chance to see that. Um, and we let me kind of start at the top. Um, we start out with kind of seven key points to provide background that we'll share with the commission that we've felt are important bullet points. I want to see if anybody wants to amend or add to anything. I do have one question on it, but I'll open it up to everybody else first. Okay. If somebody decides they want to offer something, don't hesitate to interrupt. Bullet point number seven, we talked about the comment period being extended to August 15th. Larry, you've been kind of keeping up with that. Anything new to report on that?
I have not. I did not go back and check on the website to see if it's been updated again. I know that a number of the dates for PFAS related issues and other things have been pushed out over time. I will look and see if it's been changed again and get back to you.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about how this is going to be delivered to the commission in a minute, and so we'll have some time to update that as appropriate. Um, Okay, let me see. I've got an email I want to share with everybody. Um, I think um, we did have a lot of communication on this. Let's see if I got everybody on here. I'm gonna forward an email that was sent to me by Deirdre um, over this past weekend. I know Melissa can speak to this, but I want everybody to see what Deirdre is suggesting as we go over to page two. I think I got everybody on that email. You should be getting it. Um, what she is saying is that uh, considering all the unknowns, the identified toxicity, and the impacts to surface and groundwater and all living things, um, I suggest adding perhaps as item two the following. So if you're looking at our page two in the policy decisions for consideration, um, uh, that and what she's suggesting that all applications of all biosolids be discontinued until such time as a scientifically accurate and reliable process be developed to eliminate PFAS in all biosolids materials. Um, and I guess that would really kind of fit in that bullet number two. Um, Before I open that up to discussion, um, my goal is always to take what the technical committee works on and where we've got recommendations to the commission to put them forward in the context of uh, we're speaking to elected officials. These are policy considerations that you should be aware of as elected officials that you may be asked to weigh in on in the coming future, whatever that, however we define that future. Um, and and I, Larry and I had a conversation yesterday. I have a little bit of discomfort with. I understand what Deirdre's saying 100%. I have a little bit of discomfort, and let me just identify what that is. so everybody is aware of it. But I'm uh, honor bound that whatever we consensus wise come forward with, that's what I present to the commission. And if there needs to be qualification, there needs to be qualification. But okay, that all applications of all biosolids be discontinued. To me, the qualifier should be biosolids that are identified as having PFAS that exceeds the MCL. Um, and I'll just put that out as my alternative to what you say. Now, this implies that the testing of biosolids for PFAS before they're applied is an initial step. Okay, so I've raised my concern, raised Deirdre's point. Melissa, you're kind of pinch hitting for Deirdre. Do you want to add anything first before I open it up to everybody else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Ken's on here too, if Ken wants to speak some on it. I'm looking through Deirdre's emails and everything. She's pretty passionate about this. Um,
Uh,
um,
that's a fair description.
yeah, I personally agree, more from your stance. Um, but I'm not so sure without her, I'm reading through her emails and I think you captured her intent by it. And I know that the area two of soil and water districts have um, passed up as one of their legislative items. There's a legislative item on PFAS as well. And so we had some discussion on it there. I'll see if I could find that real quick.
Oh, so
Um,
the association has taken a position?
I don't know that the association has met yet. The area two of soil and water districts had their legislative meeting and passed all of their issues to the association.
Okay.
And one of those was PFAS. It was, um,
If you find that, I appreciate you sending that on to the group. I
okay.
think that's important to make commission members aware that that position has been taken. Um, Larry, I see your hands up, but before I recognize you, Melissa called out Ken, so I feel like I need to give Ken an opportunity to weigh in if he wants to.
Um, I'm not, as they said, Deidre is very passionate about this. The problem with PFAS is that we really don't know what is a safe level. I mean, we can put out criteria there. Is that the right level? And that's why she comes down on it and says, hey, until we know, then, she'd rather err on the side of caution rather than find out, well, too late that, hey, that was the wrong level. So, but I know legislatively, that's very difficult to just say carte blanche, we're going to deny everything. So I'm kind of with Melissa. I understand your point, but I also understand Deidre's. We're in a quandary.
Okay. All right, Larry. Thanks, Ken.
So I just wanted to chime in and say that I think that when we look at something like PFAS contamination in biosolids, you need to basically ask the question, are the biosolids contaminated, and do we have methods to measure levels that would tell you uh, if they're contaminated to a level that would be of concern? And I believe we do have methods to measure, so we can tell if it's contaminated. Uh, and we have PFAS is something that's pretty pervasive in the environment. Probably a majority of those on us on the call at least have PFAS in our bodies. Uh, and so it's hard to say that we can have a zero tolerance, especially when I think about like the the farmers who use this for nutrient. Uh, if it's going to contaminate their land so it's unusable, that's the point at which I say we really should ban it. And that's the way that the outline is currently written is to try to balance all of that. Um, that said, I really appreciate everything that Deirdre has done and said because I think that her heart is really in protecting the long-term interests of the river basin.
All right, thank you, Larry. Sarah?
Yeah, I think I'm largely echo Larry's point. I think making sure that our testing standards are at a minimum, at the same threshold as Maryland, so that we do not get biosolids that are unacceptable in our neighboring for our neighbors, just because we are the next and the easiest spot to dump them down the road. I also think it's very important that, you know, we at a minimum be gathering information about contamination levels and where those contaminated biosolids are potentially going, so that in the future, if further action needs to be taken, that there is information to be the basis for future decisions.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Other comments, observations? I know better than this. All right, I'm gonna just call on some folks because I know that there's there's different perspectives here. Brian, it was Martha's couple-page email about all the research that's being done. A lot of it's centered in Virginia. We made a point of bringing out in this document. Your reaction to Deirdre's proposed language change to bullet number 2, because you got stuff at risk here.
Yeah. What you say is, Martha mentioned in her email, there's a lot of research out there on the national level and on the, state level that, I guess hasn't been really finalized, but let me just take a look at Deidre's email one more time here. But you're saying most of it is specific to this item number 2?
Yeah, that was her suggestion. It's really that one sentence, adding the sentence that all applications of all biosolids be discontinued until such time as a scientifically accurate and reliable process be developed to eliminate PFAS in all biosolid materials.
Yeah, and I would just kind of say, my summary of kind of Martha's comments on the general Farm Bureau thought is, I don't think, I think Farm Bureau wants things to be right and done properly, but I don't think the research is out there saying that we need to just stop doing it at this point. I mean, I think it's so I would say that's a little bit strong language. She's just suggesting to just stop it totally. Is that's what that's saying?
Okay. Other perspectives. Okay, Chris.
Could I butt in
Okay.
just for a sec? So
Go
I was
ahead,
just gonna
Lenore,
say,
please.
so this is my first meeting here, so there's a little bit of background that I don't necessarily have, but I do agree with all of you. I think that anytime you're working in compliance at all, it's hard to go completely one side or the other. And I do kind of agree said about farmers specifically and needing to take care of our people. But I do think that eliminating everything is a little harsh, and might be unachievable for the near future at least.
Okay, thank you. Hang on just a second. I've got somebody in the group had requested another copy that.
And Elton, Ken, I'm here again.
Go ahead.
I think Sarah made a good point that we certainly wouldn't want to have something less than Maryland would be, so that we become a dumping ground. That's I think that's an important point.
Okay. Sorry, Chris, I thought I had sent you all the materials that had gone to everybody, including that outline. I just resent that to you, so I'll give you a second to look at that. Um, Cassie, did you get the materials now that Chris had said he didn't have it?
Yes, I believe I got everything. I'm looking at the policy decisions for consideration right
Would have
now.
been an email I sent on September 11th.
Here, let me just check real quick.
We included meeting notes from July, meeting notes from August, Martha Moore's email, the outline that we've been referencing from, and then offering to resend some information that had been sent in advance of the August 20th meeting. And then subsequently, right after I sent that out, I got a copy of an email from Mike Rolban, his communication with Mike Lightfoot, Waterman, and I got Mike's permission to forward that on to everybody. And so within an hour after sending that on September 11th, I sent a subsequent with Mike Rolban's comments to Mike Lightfoot.
Yes, I received both of those. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I don't know, Cassie, if you or Chris, you're like Lenore, new to the group, or Chris is not totally new to the group. But if you have some perspectives that you want to add, we're all ears. We want to hear what everybody thinks. And Tommy, I'm going to call on you in just a second. All right. Oh, go ahead, Chris. You're coming off a
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Eldon. I'm happy to jump in here and add what I can. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I work with the larger water utilities and wastewater utilities in the state. Thanks for allowing me to kind of jump back in the group here, and thanks for the question. Happy to be a bit of a resource wherever that's helpful. I guess kind of perspective on the discussion here. We've been trying to, I've been involved in helping to shape up and improve the regulatory landscape for PFAS in Virginia very heavily the past few years. The biggest aspect of that was our water treatment plant bill, for which I was the principal proponent during the 2024 session. That was what became the Senator Pike Delegate Rasool bill that I see referenced here in Director Rolban's email the group has. The thought process there was let's delve in and tackle water supply impacts first. So it was a pretty aggressive approach there. Then in this past session, we have something more focused that Delegate Bulova ran on the Occoquan. That piece, that bill fortunately passed. In the disappointing category, Senator McPike's bill, which would have done something broader, did not make it all the way through the process. On the interest in, and that was his bill started as a testing bill on industrial sources.
Right.
And we've looked at other models around the country. Michigan is perhaps the gold standard for this, where with the automobile manufacturing industry, they have a lot of metal platers and some other prominent sources, and they've gone about a testing-based approach to identify the highest sources first and work to systematically remove them from the system. You need data to do that. We don't have a broad-based statewide approach to data collection. There have been these the health department's initiative and the DEQ initiative, but that doesn't get down to like the source level, let's say. Coming out of last session where the monitoring bill on industrial sources was shot down, and maybe a bill like that would do better in the next session. But I'll say, without wondering any longer about that, within the Municipal Wastewater Association, I've worked with them to garner their support for advancing a testing program so that we can start to get data statewide on both in-state and out-of-state sources of land-applied biosolids.
And let me interject at this point, Chris, that what you're saying there is consistent with our first bullet.
Okay.
Page
Yeah.
two.
I've not read your outline. I see you just did. Thank you.
Well, I mean, undertake an inventory of PFAS sources throughout the state. Industries that produce and release PFAS should be required to treat PFAS that exceed standards or unacceptable risk levels so that contamination does not leave the facility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I see that as consistent with what you just said.
Yeah. Sounds to me consistent.
Okay. Please
So,
proceed.
yeah. So I've been involved with a group of utilities working on defining what could become a monitoring program that would be imposed upon them to collect data on a quarterly frequency of their biosolids. Same for materials coming in from out of state that would be reported to and collected by and analyzed by the DEQ. So we can begin to get our arms around all the materials. And if there are any materials that I believe it was Brian earlier was describing, the state of the research such as it is, early or an influx. There's a ways to go there yet. So I don't know that we have a lot of good information about thresholds and such, but I remember being in a meeting at the beginning of last session where there was a good bit of interest around the table in support of what we saw in Senator McPike's bill ultimately, which was, we don't know where these thresholds are going to land, but if we get started now on data collection, we'll be in a better position for making policy decisions not too far down the road because we'll have the data that you need to support that and also understand the implications of it. And maybe in the process, by the way, I see a lot of data in different ways. Generally speaking, what I've seen across Virginia is pretty good. We don't have, in our office, we have clients in North Carolina, we have clients in West Virginia that have prominent nationally known PFAS problems. I'm happy to say I don't see any of that in Virginia, but we also don't know what we don't know, right? And that would be the point of the data collection.
And with the significant amount of Defense Department facilities in Virginia, we know that those are at least potential hotspots. Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so in that regard, all sorts of kind of different sources out there. There's the consumer products that we welcome in our home, the Scotch Guards, all of my camping products that are waterproof, that type of thing. I think that's going to be on an improving trend with product substitutions. The groundwater leaching, say from our military bases with historic AFFF firefighting foam usage. That's also at some of the commercial airports. There's a good example of that in Richmond, good or bad. Maybe I should call it a bad example of that with the airfield east of Richmond's become an issue that's being addressed. So the more we look, we're going to find some situations like that from groundwater leaching. We're talking about biosolids as a possible source too. We don't really have any data on that in Virginia yet. Basically, through the statewide Municipal Wastewater Association. These are all governmental entities. I've worked with the group's leadership to get to the point where we're going to volunteer to have mandates placed on us to do that testing so we can have the data. We need data, we need transparency. We'll see where it leads in time, but that group has been about, I know a lot about the technical committee that I've observed over the years here at the RRBC, very much about following the science. They want to help get data so that there's information available for future policymaking. So we're working on some legislation that would offer to do that for introduction in the coming session.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Chris?
Eldon, if I can make one other quick comment.
Sure.
The Maryland, the numbers and the politics you see in Maryland are, I don't know how constructive that is for Virginia, really. The legislation last session, and perhaps where some of the debate will go this year, will be around numbers that are really impossible for local governments to meet. And so effectively, those concepts, should they pass in Maryland, if they were imported here, the policy, not the material, it's a de facto ban. The MCL levels, which are in parts per trillion, are not achievable on the solid side of the operation either. So there's definitely there's a freight transport question. This goes back to the research that I've heard a couple people mention earlier, so we understand all of that. But those numbers in Maryland don't translate into anything that's workable. And then if I just step back and think about how municipal wastewater utilities and land application works in Virginia right now, it's highly dependent, both here and nationally, but highly dependent on land application. We do not have the landfill capacity, and we do not have the incineration capacity. We're down to 5 incinerators in the state. I'm aware of some evaluation of landfill capacity, and it's not there to take the material. They can use some of this for alternative daily cover on municipal solid waste, but they like to keep that to just the landfill operators to just a few percent, and we're kind of already there. The tonnages that we recycle daily would overwhelm that system. So there's no place else to really go. We saw a ban in Maine, and essentially it was a truck or train it into Canada became the answer. So I think, and I'll wrap up by saying that this problem's been with us for decades. We're just now learning what it is or is not. And I think a lot of this is learning everything we can about it as quickly as possible to make some, smart decisions that'll work broad-based across the Commonwealth. And I, for one, don't know what those should be yet, but I'm trying to do my part to help, get the data and information and help move things along as quickly as we can to make eventual good policy decisions. We did that really quickly on the water plant because we all drink the product, or many Virginians do. And even that's going to take a good period of time to chase down those sources and upgrade the water plants and get them where we want them to be too. And we just need to do something similar with these other sources as we find material sources across the state.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I think you've given us an awful lot of perspective that needs to be thought through. Larry, you got your hand up before anybody else, so go.
So I just was curious, Chris. One of the things I heard you talk about was the science, and so one of the things I'm trying to do is follow some of the science and what's happening with EPA. And right now we have a MCL uh, uh, for two of the actually there's a group of them, and the Trump administration has proposed to eliminate some of them. PFOS and PFOA, I believe, are the two that it sounds like they have no intention of changing. And the science is pretty set on those. It's clear that the others are also toxic. I think what they may do is it sounds like they were talking about eliminating them or maybe relaxing them. It's not clear to me. But what I hear from a lot of the scientists is that the science is clear that we know that it's bad. And in fact, it's so, I was talking with one of the uh, health officials from Maryland, and what he was saying is they set the um, um, fishing advisory for one of the creeks in Maryland at a level that's higher than the MCL would dictate. And the reason they did that is because it's just not feasible to go all the way to the level of that the MCL would direct them to right now. So I do think there's, at least at the staff level, there is a sensitivity to what's realistic in Maryland. I don't know what they would do legislatively. I'm just wondering if you see the landscape the same way or differently, because I am hearing from multiple parties occasionally that they think the science is unsettled, and I don't think that's really fair. We know that it's bad, uh, and we expect, I expect that as they do more and more research, they're going to find it's even more problematic than they think, which is what usually happens as science goes on.
Yeah, Larry, good morning. Thanks a lot there. And I'm not necessarily the expert on all these things either, but your understanding of what EPA is doing is my understanding as well. One thing that I noticed that's very interesting or maybe reassuring, depending on your perspective, is that in the data that's been reviewed in Virginia and separately in Maryland, about 95% or so of the situations where the other PFAS chemicals that EPA is proposing to remove or relax from the MCLs, where you see those data, you see PFOA or PFOS above the 4 parts per trillion anyway. So there's a lot of overlap.
Yes.
And 95% plus of the regulatory coverage would be maintained even if the new EPA proposal to partially relax the rule should go through. It's also a question whether they get it done, they push it through the regulatory process, and it survives review. So we'll all be following that, but it's maybe a 3 to 5% type issue in terms of scope, if I can describe that numerically. I think I agree with the points too about the science generally. In the agencies that I've seen, I thought MDE, Maryland Department of the Environment, had a pretty logical approach with their tiered tonnage approach and land application restrictions based on concentration and combining that with application rates. I don't know, precisely whether the right numbers or not. Maybe nobody does, but the concept made sense, and it's had some degree of acceptance across even those people who are impacted by the ensuing restrictions. It's the legislative piece in Maryland that focused on the 1 part per billion concept that's unachievable for everybody. And it was sort of that default scenario that EPA was looking at as part of the modeling they did in the risk assessment. That was not a regulatory number, but it's part of the analysis they did. It was used over there in a way that a lot of people argue is not an appropriate use of that. So you got the agencies doing one thing that's pretty practical and it's driving everything in the right direction. And you could probably, it's going to cause restrictions on people, but you can garner a pretty decent consensus around doing at least that. And then at the further end of the policy debate, you have these super low thresholds that become that, I'll say, quick de facto ban, which has a lot of people really worried about, well, if not that, what are we going to do?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Let me jump back in.
All right. Other perspectives. Okay. Here's what I hear.
Eldon, can I jump in quickly before
Please,
you?
Tom, please, before I stick my neck out there.
I just want to remind folks, I think that the commission should also be hearing from the forestry industry on this. I was just reading the article Lisa put in chat, and that's a very good article. Everything is directed towards farmland, but there's a lot of biosolids being spread in our forest. I just think that the forestry industry ought to be included somehow in our discussions.
Good point. And that had been raised previously, and I think you had sent some information on that, or somebody had in over the course of the last couple months. Yeah. All right. I will definitely make that amendment where we seem to have just focused in on the farming side, and so that's out there. I want to we have a dilemma. And I just love policy dilemmas. One of the questions that we are asking is if we take the Deirdre position, part of what we're saying is there's a risk. We don't know what the threshold, we don't know exactly what the threshold is. And yes, we had our two experts agreeing that there was a comfort level of science at this point, but we don't know exactly what the threshold is. And because of that, that puts farms at risk, because once it's applied, we don't have the technology or resources or ability to clean it up. Okay. How do you recover it? If you've got to, we say right up front, keep it on the site of where it's a waste product. Unacceptable risk levels so that the contamination does not leave the facility. Okay. Well, you put it on the farmland, you find out that it's beyond the threshold and you've contaminated the farm. And what is the future of that farm? Okay. But on the other hand, we have, that's my economist line. Chris makes a very valid point, and it's something I've said before. We have three choices: you land apply biosolids, you landfill it, or you incinerate it. Well, Chris, I think you said we're down to 5 incinerators, and I'd ask the question: are those incinerators appropriate? We know you've got to have what, 14? Larry, help me out here if I get this wrong. 1400 degrees. If we're going to destroy PFAS, and it's got to be sustained for a second or two. I have no idea whether those 5 incinerators can do that. I suspect not. And so you incinerate at low temperature, you're then releasing it to the air. And somebody correct me if I've got that wrong. This is from our readings and our stuff we've shared over the last several months.
So Eldon, I will add that the incinerator in Fairfax that burns
the one that's the one at Lorton.
Yes, that
Okay.
one does operate in those parameters, is my understanding.
It does.
Because your discussion prompted me to ask that question.
Okay, thank you. That's very valuable information. Thank you, Lou. So we have at least one. Okay, and how much capacity is that? And then Chris pointed out that we don't have the landfill capacity. That puts us at, okay, so what do you do? And here's what Norm, go ahead. I'm sorry, I was ignoring your hand up. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, that's okay, Ellen. I don't know. I'm just thinking probably need to find something in the middle here. I think you're absolutely right. A prohibitive ban will probably never make it through the GA.
Right.
They tend not to operate on the extremes. I think.
All right. Hold that thought for just a second. And consequently, I want to say in this document that is a policy option, and there are good arguments for that policy option. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Not
that's
necessarily saying we're recommending that, but point that out because these elected officials, the decision makers, need to know that.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think the other message that we're hearing in terms of we just don't have the data, to some extent is valid.
I think we all agree on that.
Yep. Bulova put through a bill last year for the Occoquan,
Right.
that sets up that pilot project type of thing that basically how I'd classify it. I think it would probably be appropriate for Rappahannock River Commission to put through another proposal for a pilot project to look at the farming side of this, the land application side of this. That might be one way of generating some of the data that we need. And
Farming and forestry.
yep, and that might be an appropriate way to handle it for a year or two, and then we move on from there.
Thank you, Norm. Okay, other thoughts, comments? Chris, you want to add something?
Yeah, one additional idea for possible consideration on this incineration point, or maybe more broadly, alternatives. Another idea we've been thinking of that would be helpful for setting us up for any transition that might be appropriate in the future is to have the General Assembly task, I think it would be maybe DEQ, with the idea of understanding alternatives. I think on the landfill side, you find out DEQ quickly validates what I was saying about capacity. So that leads to the question, if we don't want a land apply, but we want a landfill, how do we get a new maybe monofill or a few spread around the state? And then you could think the same thing about a high temperature incineration. Developing a new incinerator to these high performance standards, really an incinerator of any kind, but the type we're thinking of here that would be a top performer. No local government can really pull that off on their own anymore.
Well, all right. Now hold
Okay.
that thought, and let me just, because something else you said causes me to ask this question. We're talking about a monofill. Is that monofill going to have to be able to meet hazardous waste standards rather than just subtitle D? And I don't know is is an acceptable answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. We have the CERCLA designation for the two chemicals that Larry was referring to earlier.
Right.
That's the liability scheme. From a RCRA scheme, that does not automatically trigger RCRA hazardous waste status.
Okay.
Some people, as a practical matter, are just, if they have low volumes, are using hazardous waste landfills as a kind of a precautionary approach. But for high volume, regular use, I think that's a question I don't know the answer to. Would a typical Subtitle D lined landfill, so we can control and manage the leachate, be available? I think it would be, but I've never looked that far to confirm.
And see, that the reason I jumped there was because you referred to the cost of that high performing incinerator. It's the same
Right.
thing.
Right.
It's the same resource availability question. Okay,
And
go
then
ahead.
just
Continue on, Chris. I'm
just
sorry.
yeah, no, just to quickly complete the thought on like the incinerator version of that. Maybe not too far down the road here. Again, it's hard to do at an individual local level, but regionally or statewide, should there be at least a high level investigation into what would it take to develop one or two or three regional incinerator facilities that are designed to do this high temperature destruction, creating the alternatives that don't exist today. Because right now, even if we wanted to get out of the land application business, which has a lot of benefits, but we're understanding there are some trade-offs, there's no viable alternatives for the tonnage of material under discussion. Currently managed by that way is what I mean.
Yeah, and doing the main approach and shipping it to Canada is not acceptable. Larry?
So I think all of these points are excellent. I just want to add in that in my experience, and I've had some experience with trying to cite or extend permits on these kind of facilities, landfills or incinerators, and that is not an easy lift. I I I totally agree with Chris's points, but I just wanted to offer that it's not an easy lift. That's all.
Um, and pardon that this is my smart aleck bone that I have when we find ourselves with these kind of discussions. As I called a dilemma earlier, I harken back to something Terry Lasher said to us all in one of this group's earlier iterations, probably 20 years ago. Sometimes we got to learn how to get out of our own way, Larry. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's let me talk about what I'm going to do at this point, and then I want to talk about how this is going to be, because we're closing in on 1 hour, and I kind of said to people we'll try to keep it to 1 hour, how this is going to be delivered to the commission. First of all, I'm going to try to incorporate this whole dilemma discussion, this available alternatives, and maybe that another bullet here should be DEQ, or somebody should be tasked with what are our resource availabilities to deal with this material if we have to find an alternative, or if and when we have to find an alternative to land application. And so I'm going to work on that. You know, we're due to report to the commission next Wednesday. I was, up until late yesterday, I was thinking I was going to send this out with my other meeting materials that I send tomorrow to the commission in advance of the meeting, minutes, financial report, those kind of things. But I'm thinking, I'm concerned if I send this out in advance of the presentation by DEQ and VDH, we're going to inadvertently step on those presentations. And I don't want to bias commission members before they've heard. You know, we've developed this after beating it around for months after hearing the hour-long presentation. They're going to hear the half-an-hour version of it next week. So I feel like I'm going to hand this out after those presentations, and I'm going to walk the commission through it and try to do it very succinctly, because what I want them leaving with is these are policy decisions we're going to have to grapple with. And Chris, if it's okay with you, I'm going to say that your client, your organization, is working on legislation to take us to that next step of data collection. Fair enough? Okay. Because I want them to hear that. I want to be on the lookout for it. So I don't have to get this rewritten in the next 24 hours. I've got a little more time. But does anybody disagree with my concern? I really don't want to step on, we've worked hard to set up these DEQ VDH presentations to the commission. I really don't want to step on them in advance inadvertently. And please, if somebody disagrees with me, please tell me. Yeah, I mean, I would like them to see this, not spring it on them at the meeting, but I'm afraid we're going to cause more trouble than we solve if we get this out of order. So with that, all right, that's the plan. Some people on this call may hear from me in the next day or two as I work on a couple of sentences, because I'm not planning on writing, a paragraph. I'm planning on inserting some language here and there and be able to make the points that we need to make. Our elected officials, both state and local, need to know they've got some tough decisions ahead of them that they're going to have to grapple with. And the data collection part is an important part of getting to the right answers for them. And one of the things we just identified several pieces of lacking data, like what are the resource capabilities of the three alternatives? I didn't even come into this meeting thinking about that as a data collection point, but thank you, Chris, and for bringing that to us. Okay, other thoughts, comments, suggestions? Folks, I haven't been reading the chat because we've been running this meeting. I will go through the chat afterwards. I get a printout of it from Zoom, and if I have some questions, and thank you, Lisa, for putting that article in there that Tommy referred to, and thank you to everybody for your perspectives. If after leaving this discussion you have some other thoughts, don't hesitate to send me an email, or if we need to get on the phone, call me. Any parting shots from anyone? Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Chris, for rejoining the group. You didn't know how much you've been missing.
I didn't know I'd have such an opportunity this morning. Thanks for having me back, and apology for the long hiatus.
Yeah, you're always welcome back. I mean, heck, we let Norm come.
Well, thanks for reminding me that it's a very low threshold.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, have a great Wednesday, everyone. And if anybody in this group wants to, we'll be in Culpeper next Wednesday. Larry has indicated he may join us. So if anybody wants to help play backstop for me when I throw this hand grenade in the room, you're more than welcome to join us.
What's the venue next week?
Oh, we will be, let me do this. We will be at the George Washington Carver Center in Culpeper County. Its address is listed as Rapidan, although it's not really in Rapidan. The address is 9432 James Madison Highway. So it's kind of in between Orange and Culpeper in that area. And we convene, as all Rappahannock River Basin Commission meetings do, at 1 p.m. And we've got the presentation that we've been helping Max Wheeler and Bailey Davis with. We've got what I'm going to be presenting, and then we have a little presentation on data center water demands and management, as if we didn't have enough on our plate. And that will be Ryan Young and Yuri Liu. They are Ryan is Vice President of America's operation of Digital Realty. Digital Realty is the largest developer and owner of data centers in the world. And Ryan is out of their Richmond office, and excuse me, not Richmond, Washington, D.C. area office. I'm not sure exactly which jurisdiction he's in. And Yuri Liu is the Director of Energy and Engineering. So he's the engineering right hand to Ryan Young. Because the commission heard from JLART at their March meeting, then requested to hear from Dominion at the last meeting. We'll be hearing from Digital Realty, and just full disclosure, the director of the Americas, and because Digital Realty is a global corporation, I didn't know this until a few months ago. The director for all the Americas. So this is Ryan Young's boss. Is a guy named Steve Smith, who is the son of my first cousin. And just happened to run into him at the beach at a family reunion, and we were talking about what each other had been doing since the last time we'd seen each other, like 20 years ago. And he told me, I said, "Wow, I need to talk to you." So we've got some folks. Oh, and they are kind of on the cutting edge of managing water demand and trying to create better energy efficiency. That's how they got invited to this, because they are the leaders out there worldwide in trying to create greater efficiencies, both energy and water. And so they're going to be talking about some of the new technologies, which includes water or liquid cooled chips, which blew my mind when he told me about those, because I don't know, I understand how you get liquid in with all that electricity and not create something. I'm not sure what. Anyway, so and that's just the second big presentation. That's after we talked about PFAS. So should be a good presentation. And commission members have been invited by David Lee, who is the commission's member from Culpeper County, after the meeting to take a tour of their data center campus. So we got a lot going on next Wednesday, and everybody's welcome to attend. Just let me know so I know you're going to be there. Pardon that long explanation of the commission meeting's agenda. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Yep. And you can participate in the meeting virtually. You know, just let me know.